Hello, everyone, and welcome to Improvate's CyberTech 2021 International Conference. I'm Lauren Izso. Improvate is a platform for creating long-lasting connections, enabling change-makers in technology and decision-makers in government to make progress through innovation. Improvate is all about finding solutions and sparking collaborations that improve the quality of life for people around the world. Today's broadcast will be dedicated to cybersecurity. Amidst a rapidly changing technological landscape that has redefined how organizations do business and how governments provide services, and with the increasing penetration of IoT devices, cybersecurity is an issue that impacts everyone today, be it smartphone users, security organizations, and the military, financial institutions, or governments. The global pandemic has intensified the digitization process and accelerated the move online of government services, business, education, health, and other fields. However, this transition has exposed these essential services to an unprecedented increase in cyber threats. Israel, as we know, is a world leader in the field of cybersecurity. And today we will hear from leading Israeli cybersecurity companies and experts on how to tackle growing cyber threats. Some of the top Israeli technology companies are presenting at Improvate today. CyberTech, including CYBERINT, Protex, ZIMPERIUM, and Reta. As always, watching along with us are representatives of investment funds from around the world who are looking to invest in Israeli innovation. Now, with us here in the studio is Nimrod Kozlovski, a partner at the law firm Herzog, Fox & Ne'eman, and Yochai Corem, a cybersecurity leader and innovator, and the CEO of CYBERINT, a leader in threat intelligence and digital risk protection. But first, joining us now via video link is former Bulgarian President Rosen Plevneliev, who is a member of Improvate's advisory board. President Plevneliev, it is so great to have you with us again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so smiling. It's such a great to come again together. And dear friends of Improvate, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, friends, we are so many decision makers today again, coming from different sectors, from the banks to the governments, to the private sector, to the government sector, coming together. And we are so excited. I'm so grateful to be again with you because I'm learning a lot, like all of the people who today participate. But we're not just learning a lot, we're coming together in an effort to be better, in an effort to bring solutions in a world that is changing so fast. I want to emphasize recently the European Commissioner on Human Rights, Madam Jourova, has a very passionate speech about cyber war being around us and China and Russia and the United States being heavily involved into this. Probably when the European Commission speaks about that so openly, then we probably understand how serious the situation is. And that is why I really want to thank Improvate again. That is bringing all of us together. And I want to thank all of the participants today. Every 30 seconds, we have a cyber attack being launched in the world. No one is immune and no one is safe. And that is why we need to bring solutions that work. And that is why we have so many regions today, from Southeast and Central Europe, also to other regions in the world, listening to the world leading industry, the one of Israel, and hoping to cooperate so that we could benefit together. I want also to emphasize today with my opening remarks on a special country we have today, and that is Romania, represented by the former Prime Minister Victor Ponta. He's a young and a great and a bright guy, just because recently the European Commission took a decision that the cybersecurity issues in the European Union are going to be covered, including in a new center that is now funded and based in Romania. So again, we will have a country that wants to heavily specialize in bringing solutions to the biggest market in the world, that is the European market. Of course, Bulgaria is heavily represented, other countries in the region. Again, I want to thank all of you. I'm so proud to be with you. I will listen very carefully. I will learn, and I will be with you in our effort to be more safe and to be more cooperative together. Thank you.
Mr. President, like I said, we are really happy to have you with us once again today. Now, there have been many high-profile cybersecurity breaches in the Balkans, including in Bulgaria. What is being done to strengthen security and digital sovereignty, and how can Israeli cyber tech companies get involved in that?
Absolutely. And when I was the acting head of state in the period 2012-2017, we saw the biggest and the heaviest cyber attack on the Balkans happening in our country, which was, I have to say very clearly, as we traced who was initiating what happened, it was initiated by a group called Fancy Bear, which could be linked to the Russian military foreign intelligence. Actually, the purpose of that attack was in a day of elections and a day of national referendum to show how Bulgarian democracy is confused, doesn't work. So something that was very important, and I mean a referendum that was about to change the way Bulgarians vote, and especially in electronic distance voting, was about to be, in a way, destroyed, to be delegitimized. And that was a very difficult moment also in my presidency. I have to say that we managed, first we were shocked. And unfortunately, we didn't have such great friends like our friends in Israel to help us in the first minutes. But we managed during the day of the heaviest attack in the Balkans to overcome that. But how do we learn? I made a National Security Council. We took a new cybersecurity strategy in place. We have a cybersecurity coordinator, and he's going to be today with us. But that's not enough. As the things are changing so fast, we shouldn't stay where we were by 2015 or 2016. And that is why Improvate is bringing to us the very best of the latest solutions, the very best of the latest technologies in place to help governments like the Bulgarian, Romanian, and many others in Southeast Europe, but also to have companies to come together because the cyber threat today is everywhere.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. We will come back to you very shortly. Thank you for that. All right, it's time now to speak with Dr. Nimrod Kozlovski, a law professor, law partner, venture capitalist, and cybersecurity consultant. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Pleasure.
So with your wide perspective, tell us whether we have the necessary legal environment in place to deal with cybercrimes and how legislation can keep pace with technology.
I think that's a fascinating question. The interlink between the law and the technology and the kind of like threat environment. We used to think 20 years back or 30 years back when cybercrime just emerged, that the legal solution would be with just any other crime. Just as we have with any other crime, let's make it a crime and let's go with enforcement capabilities that we have to try to go after the bad guys and prosecute them. That failed miserably. We don't actually do very well in finding the cyber criminals or getting them beyond bars. However, we realized that they should be kind of like Cyber 2.0 with the law, which is more being concerned with how we protect ourselves and what we do in order to handle the damage of a cyber incident. So the law shifted from dealing with actually the criminals themselves and how to bring them to justice. The law shifted more to focus on our obligations to protect our networks, our requirements to notify individuals who were the victims of a cyber incident, how we are required as hubs to keep data or to process data in order to protect or sometimes alert on time potential victims. So the law shifted from being a cybercrime law, which is just as any body of criminal law field dealing with the criminals, it's much more focused now with cybersecurity and the obligations to conduct cybersecurity operations, the requirements. And now we have a very detailed body of law from corporate governance, how to handle security, what kind of controls you need to have, who you need to notify about an incident, what would be your liability if you failed to protect kind of like the data subject. So it's now more of information security law rather than cybercrime law. The one field that I think developed in parallel is cyber investigations. And I think we have Yochai here, who is really an expert in cyber intelligence and cyber investigations.
We'll get to him shortly, I promise.
Yeah, sure. But, you know, I'm very impressed that you brought Yochai to the broadcast because he's really an expert in this field of how you take intelligence and take incident information and turn them into a broader investigation. And the law is changing the way that we can collect evidence, the way that we can share evidence, how we can actually take intelligence and turn it into evidence in legal proceedings. So a lot of the changes actually were in the procedural law rather than in the criminal restrictions themselves.
Right. Some really interesting shifts there.
Very much.
We're going to get back to this, so please stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Pleasure.
We're now going to move to Admiral Emil Eftimov. He's Bulgaria's Chief of Defense. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval War College and NATO's School for Senior Officers. Thank you so much for joining us, Admiral. Let's talk about the importance of cybersecurity in the military field. How crucial is cyber on the modern battlefield?
Hello. Good morning. Unfortunately, Admiral Eftimov is not able to participate in that very important event. So please accept his apologies because he's involved right at the moment with an expected engagement. I am Brigadier General Sabinsky. I'm newly appointed as a commander of CIS and Cyber Defense Command. So I was tasked to represent him and to take to talk about the questions that you just raised. So we here, the military and political senior management are with a clear understanding, together with our colleagues from NATO, that we are working and the troops and the weapons are fully dependent on the cyberspace as never so far. Currently, we have to operate in this very newly defined battle space. Free exchange of data, reliable processing of networks have been identified as critical points to conducting military operations successfully. It is essential to understand that the troops' vulnerability in cyberspace is related to their dependence on the cyberspace. Cyberspace provides options for friendly, neutral, and opposing forces. So we need to be able to counter opposing actors in support of operations as capability continue to develop and become more advanced. Freedom of action in cyberspace also affects the armed forces. Effective operations depend on many networks, including critical national infrastructure, industrial control systems, weapon systems, command and control systems, and logistic systems. In order to assure confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information, as well as user and entity authentication and non-repudiation, communication information systems, including networks and data repositories, must be highly resilient to threats from cyberspace, both in peacetime and during armed conflicts.
Well, we're, of course, very disappointed that the Admiral was unable to join us today, but very appreciative that you were able to join us in his place, so thank you for that. Well, the Bulgarian armed forces are undergoing an intense process of modernization. What kind of technologies are you looking for in the cybersphere?
What kind? Primarily, we have been cooperating with our allies in NATO and EU in cyber defense sphere. We have closely been working with the government of the United States of America and NATO command structure. However, we are open to every promising proposal from friendly nations. What is presented at the market is very broad, and we are open to communicate and to take into account any development and any friendship.
All right. Thank you, Commander, for joining us. We really appreciate you filling in for the Admiral so last minute. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're now going to go back to Dr. Kozlovski. Thank you for staying with us.
Pleasure.
Now, specifically with regard to fake news, what steps can be taken to increase the credibility of information published on the internet?
Oh, that's one of the biggest problems.
It's a big question, yeah.
We cannot actually trust information on that. We focus on fake news as how information being presented to us as news is actually coming from a source which is dubious, sources that actually fake the story. And the problem is that it's very easy with the internet, which was not created with the security mechanisms in place to authenticate the source of information or to authenticate an IP address. It's very easy to mimic activity or mimic any content that would seem to come from a credible source. So it's just as easy to create hundreds of thousands of bots that would mimic hundreds of thousands of individuals. And certainly the impact that we have psychologically when we see a post being shared or being posted by hundreds of thousands of people, we assign trust to it. And certainly people fall to this kind of information and share it or retweet it. And then we assign the credibility of the individual that we know that now is sharing this content. And it's becoming really a pandemic for us, because when you cannot trust media sources, when you cannot trust information that you want to rely on, we can certainly manipulate not only political activities or social activities, but we can also manipulate commercial activities. We can certainly manipulate trade, has been done very frequently. It's a source for fraudulent activity. We understand that we need to build trust into the internet. The problem, though, it's not a solution by one company. Platforms need to align together in combating it. They can do a lot, because for a platform, let it be Facebook or let it be other social media platform, to try to authenticate a source, it's a much an easier task. They can know if a profile is coming from an individual or just a bot, it's just an automated traffic. They can tell if a source is reliable or associated with former information and actually assign for us some kind of credibility. They can certainly detect when activity seems to be fraudulent activity. We know the patterns. We know a pattern that, for example, an individual post is being posted at the same time by many sources that seem to be connected and actually get viral by this kind of distribution pattern. They can tell it. They can also ask individual to report and have an immediate kind of like response center to delete or control around fake news. However, sometimes they do not have the incentives. Sometimes it's a problem that you need a coordination between many players in order to come up with a solid solution. And third, the legislation as it stands in the moment does not create any incentive for the large players to invest heavily in creating this kind of monitoring system. Just to give you an example, let's assume that I'm a platform and I want to demonstrate that there's a lot of activity in my platform. I sometimes kind of benefit from the fact there are many fake profiles that would be clicking, linking, or sharing this content. Not necessarily I'm the one that incentivizes to block these fake profiles. When sometimes fake profiles trigger a lot of heated discussion or a lot of intensified deliberation on the internet, I'm kind of enjoying from it. I'm not necessarily in a position that I want to stop it. Sometimes the law has to intervene and create the right incentives, and sometimes it's kind of like back to industry standards or initiatives how to bring those parties together. So it's not up to the individual to stop fake news, it's up to the platforms, and that's a much harder task that requires both coordination, incentive, and a kind of collaborative effort.
I found it really interesting that you chose the word pandemic to describe fake news. It's really interesting.
And no, by the way, in this pandemic, we know that the fake news around vaccination or fake news around some aspects of the COVID-19 public health issues really created also an impact on our public health, because people were terrified by stories that were totally fake stories. Sometimes it was kind of like a media hoax or a media joke that got viral just because people were in a panic and they really consumed this kind of fake news.
Absolutely. I know you were just waiting for me to bring Yochai into the conversation, so it's finally time for that. Yochai Corem is a seasoned executive and strategic cybersecurity leader and innovator with over 20 years of experience. Currently, Yochai is the CEO of CYBERINT, responsible for the company's impressive growth over the last 12 months. He's a former officer of the Israeli intelligence unit 8200 and holds an MBA from the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya and a BSc in electrical engineering from Tel Aviv University. CYBERINT delivers threat intelligence and digital risk protection services to clients around the world, including leading enterprises and Fortune 500 companies. Leveraging a proprietary platform and best-of-class managed service, CYBERINT provides actionable intelligence and insights into the threats that are most relevant and important to proactively protect organizations from cyber attacks beyond the perimeter. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Great being here, thanks.
So can you describe in your own words how you help your customers be more secure?
Definitely. CYBERINT tries to provide security beyond the perimeter. This includes mainly two aspects. Every organization has digital assets, may it be the domain, IP addresses, and today very common cloud assets that are being used widely. And if it's a large organization, it's very hard to manage and understand what are those assets that actually the organization holds. What CYBERINT does, on the one side, is trying to discover those assets. We scan the entire internet a few times a week. We try to associate between a name of an organization, which is the only thing we need as a starting point, to all the different cloud assets and IP addresses and domains, etc. And then once we have this attack surface mapping, which is a very sophisticated task for many organizations today, we're continuously scanning those for any misconfigurations, problems, or what is called in the industry shadow IT. And we've seen many attacks that are initiated just by an FTP server that is left open or something of a sort. So this is one area of what we're doing. To complete that, CYBERINT has invested the last almost 10 years to get very deep in the open, deep, and dark web. This means that we're collecting mostly all the cybersecurity part of the darknet, Telegram, social media, instant messaging, code repositories, and many other places all around the open, deep, and dark web. We're collecting this into our data lake, and then we're trying to attribute whether any discussion or chatter in the darknet could mention our customer, their product, the executives, that show there's an intention for a data breach, or it could be there's already data that has been linked either from the company, its employees, or partners that could threaten the business of the organization.
So, Yochai, why is digital risk protection important in today's evolving cybersecurity arena?
It's a great question, and when I speak to our customers, I ask them, why have you chosen CYBERINT? And they give me, at the end of the day, two types of answers. The first one is the strategic answer. Cybersecurity is something you cannot feel and touch, right? And for many board members and executives, they hear the news, but they want to understand, is it justifying the investment in cybersecurity in their company? With threat intelligence, with what we are able to bring, we give the CISO actually evidence that there are attacks, they are threatened, and the organization should invest in cybersecurity. On the operational level, which is the other types of answers, is the fact that we are tracking any chatter, any misconfiguration, and alerting. And when you fix it after 30 seconds or even one day, you actually create the majority or the higher chance that you will fix it before threat actors are finding it and trying to use it. In addition, for many companies, and we'll talk about it in a second, they'll see phishing attacks, they'll see fake social profiles, as Nimrod mentioned. What happens if a threat actor uses your brand to create a fake page and try to lure people to give their information, credentials, etc., as part of the attack? So what CYBERINT is doing, first, we are detecting those, and secondly, we're taking the remediation on ourselves. So this means that the organization can focus on fixing problems internally, right, where they need their own people, and we can take on their behalf the remediation of fake social pages, phishing site, fake applications, and others, which is part of the attacks we see today.
So let's expand a little more on those cyber attackers. What are the key vectors that are being used in these kinds of attacks?
First of all, when you deal with it like CYBERINT and like myself, it's actually amazing.
Sounds amazing.
It is amazing because we are collecting 40 million pieces of data every month that are all related to threat actors' activity. You see, this is a good business. People can do it from home, from 14 years old to 70. There's no requirement. There are affiliation programs. Someone can develop tools. They will sell the tools. Someone can do a good operation. They will execute using those tools. Some people are like marketing. They will find where there are problems. So it's a very interesting world. And what we can see, if we talk a little bit about numbers, is phishing is really, really an effective method. Phishing, smishing, phishing. There are all kinds of phishing type of, where the goal is to get the confidence of the victim to give away credentials, data, credit card, etc. We're taking down every month more than 1,000 different fake sites that are popping up like mushrooms after the rain. Secondly, I think we covered in the last, 90 days, more than 1.5 million credit cards. Full credit card with CVV, with the full dates. And if you are in the right Telegram channels, and feel free to contact me, I can direct you those. You can definitely do your shopping without spending $1. And this is an ever-changing challenge to get. And they get it from different schemers and different ways of technologies how to get those. In addition, I would say this is the most amazing fact I saw in CYBERINT. We are collecting about 750,000 infected info stealers that are coming from infected machines. This means that every one of us are downloading a movie or something we thought we can get free. And inside, and again, part of the business of those hackers, there is a small malware that collects everything you have in the computer, bypass most of the antiviruses, as we can see, because those malwares report what they've bypassed. And eventually, they take your credit cards and all the things you stored in your browser, all the username and password. This means that today I have thousands and hundreds of thousands passwords to different, from eBay to Netflix to HSBC to others. And this has been traded in Genesis, in the Russian market, and other marketplaces as part of the business. So I would say credentials, phishing are the most, till today, the best way for people to get into the organization.
And we definitely have to be really, really careful about what we're doing with our passwords and our information. Finally, Yochai, what would be your 3 tips to a CIO or CISO that wants to start implementing this kind of digital risk protection program?
So first of all, going back to the previous question, implement 2-factor authentication on all the services. It makes it much harder. But if you look at the program, I would say, first of all, you need to understand there is a program. You need to have a program. Just having a firewall, an antivirus, a SIEM, or an EDR is not enough. It costs much less to stop the attack where it is before it enters your perimeter. So invest in a threat intelligence or digital risk protection program. Secondly, verify it covers vulnerability and perimeter analysis, brand abuse, data leakage, fraud, phishing, all of them together from a single player that can actually integrate and understand how those things influence one another. And lastly, as we discussed, don't give away on remediation. Verify that this information is actionable. Either you can use it immediately to fix things, or the company you work with can take that on your behalf. And I think this is what we're doing for our customers for the last few years with very high success. We save them a lot of money.
Interesting. Lots to look out for, and best of luck with your technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on now to Victor Ponta, who's the former Prime Minister of Romania. He's also the founder and sole shareholder of VP Projects Advisors. Thank you for joining us.
Good day. First of all, I would like to say hello from Bucharest, which has been recently chosen by the European Union to host the European Cybersecurity Agency. And I think we should be proud of this, but also to talk about how Bucharest and Romania has developed in the cybersecurity. But once again, took the opportunity to thank my neighbor and friend, President Rosen Plevneliev, to invite me to join Improvate conference. I'm very happy to, and I'm very happy to listen, to learn, to share experiences. I'm an online addicted, like even more maybe than my children. We are fighting every day who is spending more time online. And listening to your guests who were speaking, I was just praying that the cybersecurity continues to advance as long as my ID, my credit cards, my conversations, locations, including my food and wine preferences are all online. And sometimes I spend few seconds thinking, what if all these data will be known by everybody? Am I going to be embarrassed or not? So, but I think this is the world in which we are living. We have to adapt. We have always to try to keep the pace with the risks of this, but never go back. Never think that we need less online development, less security. So I will just share with you few ideas about the Romanian experience. And I will start with something which might be funny now, but 20 years ago, before I joined politics, you know, we all do mistakes in life. I was a very young prosecutor, and our American partners, they were literally exhausted by fighting with Romanian hackers. It was the end of the 90s, and we had very smart young people in Romania, and they were really destroying all the online trade, which was developing in the United States. And we were few young prosecutors, educated, trained in America. One of my older colleagues told me, "You are wasting your time. You will never catch thieves with a computer." I'm happy to say that he was wrong. And now we need more law enforcement, more people trained to protect all of us, because our life depends on this. So since then, in 20 years, Romania had a very exciting development of the human resources. Young people speaking not only English, but many foreign languages. They train, fortunately, Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca, Timișoara, we developed some cybersecurity and IT hubs. We took some fiscal decision which no government has changed in 15 years, which is 0 people working in the IT sector. And we've been working very closely, public institution, law enforcement, and private companies. I would say this is the recipe for Romanian success in this area. We are also the victims of this success. A lot of manwork shortage. It's not easy anymore to find young people. Salaries are increasing. The cost of life is increasing. But still, we are trying in this part of Europe to be a very active actor in cybersecurity. As a member of the government, we tried always to adopt the legislation, the procedures, in order to help the law enforcement, but also the private companies to assure the cybersecurity. And we have succeeded in many of the cases. We had also our failures. And I think this is one of the best opportunities to share and to listen and to learn and to work together on this respect.
Definitely lots to learn here. Now, here in Israel, there is a major shortage of manpower to fill the demand for positions in the tech sector in general. Should Israeli companies be looking to Romania for talent, maybe?
They have already. There are a lot of Israeli companies already working, as I was previously saying, Bucharest, Cluj-Napoca are the big cities which became hubs for IT and cybersecurity. But we have the same problem. It seems that the young people graduating from universities ready to join the private or the public sector in IT and cybersecurity is never enough, because technology is developing faster than the young population. And yes, I would really encourage the Israeli companies, the ones who have already invested and have been very successful in Romania, but also new ones to come to invest. But also I am struggling and hope to convince our universities, our education system to be more business oriented and to say, okay, even in Romania, we have enough lawyers or enough classic educated people. We need more IT young people. And it's going to be a big challenge for Europe in the years to come.
Sir, one last question for you. How important is promoting and developing cooperation between the public and private sectors at national and international levels in the cybersecurity field?
So international, I was just mentioning Bucharest as being the head office of European Agency for Cybersecurity. It is still underworking. It's still a lot to improve the cooperation, even within the European Union. I can imagine that outside the European Union, it's even more complicated. Romania has a special relationship with the United States, also with Israel, and we are cooperating. But it's still, I think it's not enough. I think that national governments should understand that there is no risk or easier crime cross-border than the cybercrime. So I think that nobody is happy with the cooperation, and we should do it even more. On the national level, and I will conclude with this, I strongly believe that asking law enforcement, public institutions to work with the private companies, it was the successful choice. All right, Romania, Israel, America, all over Europe, there are always discussion, legitimate, most of them, about, yes, the state wants to control too much, the law enforcement, the secret services, but in the end, just putting what we are winning, what we are losing. I strongly believe, as now being in the private sector, but working for 20 years on the political area, that cooperation, public institution, law enforcement, and private companies in cybercrime, it's the key to success.
Okay, Victor Ponta, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. All right, let's go back to Dr. Nimrod Kozlovski. Thank you for staying with us.
Pleasure.
All right, so governments around the world are tightening regulations on big tech. What is the regulatory environment in Israel, and where is it headed?
You know, I think we have a challenge in the regulatory environment. While we progress a lot in the technology, we certainly progress a lot in the business aspects of cybersecurity. Regulation did not keep the same pace. And now it's becoming a challenge. It's gradually becoming a challenge because international cooperation requires to have some kind of agreed framework, agreed regulatory framework. Just to give you an example, the EU has done a tremendous work in putting together the GDPR, which is the privacy regulation that regulates how you deal with private information, how you protect it, how you notify a breach, what's the right of the data subject. Israel still have a privacy law that is dated in 1980, prior to the internet, prior to the cloud, to the shift to the cloud.
Is it even relevant anymore from 1980?
So the 1980 law is gradually becoming irrelevant, and it's becoming kind of like patches on top of an outdated law. And that's certainly a challenge. You know, there's been changes as new regulation around security requirements and some regulations around data notification, but that's not sufficient. You do not do regulation as a patching process. You need to have kind of like a solid regulation which has the same logic or the same architectural foundations. As I think EU is really setting kind of like an example to the world how you do a solid regulation. Now with the artificial intelligence, for example, security is one aspect of it, but artificial intelligence requires a lot of regulatory changes in the way that we regulate the use, the lack of bias, the security aspects of it. Again, the EU is putting a framework for regulation and saying, okay, that will be the foundations. It's a very detailed, but also has a logic that connects the dots. Unfortunately, in Israel, we keep using different pieces of regulation and trying to come together with what is the regulatory environment. There is an effort, which is unsuccessful due to political reasons primarily, to pass kind of like a cyber law, a consolidated cyber law in Israel. There's a lot of objection around it because cyber law always put in front issues as privacy rights. What is the balance between the private sector and the government?
And that law would replace the law that's in place now from 1980?
That's the law. The cybersecurity law does not intend to be a privacy law. The privacy law for itself is undergoing some reform, and there are amendments being suggested to update the law. And I think the Israeli privacy regulator is now doing a very good job in trying to update the law. The Israeli cyber law is more geared toward being the framework for the cyber security of Israel. So how we are required to protect ourselves, how we're required to share information, what is the role of the national CERT, which is the kind of like the intelligence hub, how private entities need to investigate a cyber incident and what information they need to provide the government once they have an incident. some restrictions about the use of proactive security. It should be kind of like a more consolidated body of law around cybersecurity. There have been several attempts to pass this law or to bring it into some kind of legislative process. So far, we're not successful in that. So I think in Israel, we have a very strong cybersecurity industry. We certainly have very strong practices around cybersecurity, including cyber investigation and cyber litigation. We're still lacking the kind of regulation that would support it.
Interesting. We're so far ahead in certain aspects, and this seems to be pulling us back a little bit. Very interesting. Please don't go anywhere. All right, let's move on now to Valentin Nikolov, who is the executive member of the board of directors and CEO of Bulgarian Energy Holding EAD, which owns a comprehensive portfolio of companies along the electricity, natural gas, and coal supply chains in Bulgaria. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. All right, I hope you can still hear me. I'm going to move on to the first question. As the world moves over to renewable energy and flexible digitized grids, supplies are becoming increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks. What is being done to protect critical energy infrastructure? All right, it looks like we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty, unfortunately. So, Nimrod, I'm going to come back to you, and let's touch a little bit on that cybersecurity law again. Do we have any estimates of when we're going to see that law actually come into place, the one we were discussing just a moment ago?
Certainly. First of all, Israel understands that we need to have a body of law that would comply with the GDPR. Otherwise, the EU is becoming kind of aggressive toward countries that do not apply the same standard. And Israel has done a lot in order to do what we call laws proximity, to get closer to the GDPR. I think we'll see the privacy law, given that the Israeli Minister of Law is now kind of like more interested in this reform, that we'll see the updated privacy law being enacted in the near future. And I think we can expect an updated privacy law. As for cyber law, I think that it will take time because interests and dynamics around this legislation has delayed the process. And certainly it's a very tenuous issue, how private entities need to provide information to the government, what limitations they have on kind of like their normal activity. And I think that would require more of a deliberation and more of in-depth discussion before we'll move forward with the law.
Well, hopefully it won't be too much longer.
I hope so.
All right, let's go back to President Plevneliev. Back to you, sir. Thank you for staying with us. Are you still with us, sir, Mr. President?
I'm unmuting. Very happy to be with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I was wondering if you could please tell us about the threats posed today to states at the national level by malicious actors.
Absolutely. I was witnessing so many such attacks. Can you just remember when, for example, all the emails and the content of the emails, all the members of the German parliament have been stolen? So imagine, but that's true. Also, Bulgaria was heavily attacked during a day of election and a day of referendum. Also, we had for example, so many suspicions that elections being organized in France or being organized even in the United States in one or the other way have been mismanaged because of the social media and the content that was spread there. Or just look at situation that governments today struggle with the pandemics. That is hitting. No one is immune, no one is safe. It could go anywhere. But fake news about the jabs and about the vaccines spreading all over the world. And I have to say, in my country, the Bulgarians are so well equipped with Facebook profiles. Everybody is there. One of the highest internet speeds in the world we do have, and we're enjoying that. And probably because of that, as the government failed easily and quickly to explain to people why vaccination is so important, actually fake news spread in such a dramatic way that today almost half of the Bulgarians don't believe that the vaccines are bringing a solution. And 1/3 of Bulgarians say we would never get vaccinated. And that's linked to security. That's linked again to opening the economy. That's linked to saving and preserving working places and perspective for human beings all over the world. What can and should governments do? I think the best example we can find in Israel, because you friends, you've done a very, very, very sophisticated, but also very well working ecosystem that has a government that is sensitive on what is important. Security, above all, is very important for people. But also you have a thriving private sector, and you have an ecosystem between government and private actors that is working together to help people. And I think that what we want to learn and what we also want to do in our countries is, again, to make our ecosystem work as efficiently as your ecosystem works.
All right, President Plevneliev, thank you. We will come back to you very shortly, I promise. All right, since we had a technical difficulty with our last guest, we now have him back, so we're going to start that all over again. Valentin Nikolov is executive member of the board of directors and CEO of Bulgarian energy holding EAD, which owns a comprehensive portfolio of companies along the electricity, natural gas, and coal supply chains in Bulgaria. Thank you for joining us once again. Now, as the world moves over to renewable energy and flexible digitized grids, supplies are becoming increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks. What is being done to protect critical energy infrastructures?
Thank you very much. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfect. Go
Okay,
ahead.
super. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be part of the improved CyberTech conference. It is a pleasure for me to see all of you, professionals, experts in politics, all with long experience in the cyber security and the technology. Sustainable energy transition and energy security are impossible without digital technologies. This makes high demands of the cyber security of energy system and infrastructure. A high level of competence and the constant technology adoption. In the Bulgaria Energy Holding, the energy companies part of the group apply an approach based on the national and the European legislation and requirements, as well as the best practice in the cyber security and cyber resilience. For example, one of our companies, Bulgarian Electricity System Operator, works with leading technology companies, universities, and operators from all over Europe on the projects in the order implements innovations and energy cybersecurity funded by Horizon Europe. We have resiliently set up in Bulgarian Energy Holding a group for innovations in energy, including innovations related to resilience, and this includes cyber resilience. I believe that only by working together with mutual trust and respect on development of innovations and expert potential and European and international level, we can meet the growing challenges of cybersecurity.
Sir,
Thank
now,
you.
in your opinion, does distributed energy create greater vulnerability, or can it in fact enhance security?
Development and implementation of common standard in terms of software technological infrastructure, including data management. This depends on the vulnerability of distributed energy systems if they do not allow, let's say, remote access of have a high level of security against unauthorized access. They can ensure accessible, locally produced, energy independent of the vulnerabilities of centralized energy production and supply.
All right, Valentin, Nikolov, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's bring the conversation back to the studio. Asaf Peleg is Vice President of Strategic Projects and Director of Business Development at ZIMPERIUM, a global leader in mobile security and the only mobile security platform purpose-built for enterprise environments. ZIMPERIUM secures both mobile devices and applications so they can safely and securely access data, leveraging unique on-device detection capabilities. Asaf helps run the company's research team, is part of the company's product management team, and handles sales in Israel. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Asaf, a lot of people are still operating according to the belief that mobile devices and mobile applications are relatively secure. Can you help correct these assumptions?
Sure. A mobile device is a computer. It's stronger than the computers that brought man to the moon. It's even stronger than some of the computers that we used 20 years ago as far as storage and CPU and memory. And it's always on and it's always connected, which means that you as an user, an employee, have everything you need on it. But from an attacker, it has everything they want on it, which means that they have access to your banking information, they have access to your browsing history, they have access to apps that you use on a regular basis, and they have access to corporate information, emails, WhatsApp messages, Telegram messages, Signal messages, anything, assuming they can get on the device. Just yesterday, Apple released a new version of iOS because they had a 0-day that was being probably exploited. And the week before, they released another version of iOS, which was the same thing. Not to say that Apple is less secure than anyone else, but as long as there are people writing code, there will be people leveraging the vulnerabilities generated as a result. Now, having said that, just look at Zerodium, which is a website that is dedicated to buying exploits. If you look at supply and demand, exploits get sold there from $250,000 and above, right? So that tells you that there's a lot of supply. And that means that there are vulnerabilities. There are vulnerabilities in the operating system. There are vulnerabilities in the applications that you use. There are vulnerabilities everywhere. And a lot of people are just waiting to exploit them.
Definitely. Now, Asaf, the coronavirus pandemic obviously accelerated most organizations' investments in digital transformation and made necessary the implementation of collaboration platforms. There's a lot of implications there for mobile device access to enterprise data. What do organizations need to keep in mind from a mobile security standpoint when they're optimizing these setups for their remote workers?
Well, first and foremost, there's a saying in the Air Force saying, the one you can't see is the one that will shoot you down. So they have no visibility into mobile devices. Think of an organization from a protection perspective like a big castle with moats and gates and guard towers and everybody looking outwards. But then incoming the employees carrying these little Trojan horses that bypass everything because they have everything on it, sure. Okay? And this is a very easy gateway for an attacker to jump from the mobile endpoint to the desktop or laptop or servers or anything else within the organization. So what organizations need to keep in mind is the need to, A, secure their mobile devices and mobile applications, and have the visibility as to what's going on these devices.
Right. It's not like you can ask people not to use mobile devices, right?
Of course.
Now, ZIMPERIUM acquired a company named WhiteCryption earlier this year as a strategic move to build a mobile application protection platform. How does that now differentiate what you're offering for securing the mobile application development lifecycle compared to other companies?
So if you look at the world of mobile security, you have two distinct pathways. One is securing mobile devices, which we have a solution for, that secures the device itself. But you have situations where either you as an app developer or you as an app user do not have control over the devices that your users actually use. Think of like a bank or an insurance company or anyone that has a remote workforce that they bring their own devices. And the only way for them to use whatever you do is via an app. the app then becomes the very vulnerability that you're trying to protect. So having a single platform used to protect everything coming from the build phase where you build the app to the field phase where it's deployed on the field, and we have several products that are aimed at every link in that chain, having that would allow you to have a greater degree of security because, let's face it, an app can either be used by an attacker to gain corporate information. If you're a bank, I can use it to steal money from your users. But if you're an app developer that builds a business app, I can use it to steal business information. So I think of Salesforce, right? I'm not saying that there is one, but if there was an exploit in Salesforce, I could use it to hack into some organization, get all their sales information and their leads and their prospects and everything they're planning, and just sell it. So having the protection of apps, especially when you can't control the device, is very, very important.
Very frightening stuff, Asaf.
Well,
Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Kozlovski, back over to you. Now, we have seen major cyber hacks and ransom attacks over the past year, both here in Israel and, of course, around the world. What kind of risk management protocols do companies need to protect sensitive data?
Oh, that's a perfect question.
This is the one you were waiting for, right?
That's the one I was waiting for. Ransomware became all over the place. Checkpoint estimates that we have just in Israel alone something like 700 organizations being targeted by major ransomware attack every month. We assume that there are hundreds of thousands of organizations that were target of cyber attacks as a ransomware. Let's first understand. A ransomware means that someone got into the organization, was able to penetrate the organization, and either encrypt all your information so it's not accessible to you, or either get some of your information leaked and now extort you in order to get the information back. Now we see what we call double extortion. It's both that encrypt the data so data is not accessible, sometimes even deleting your backups so you don't have any information available for the organization, and at the same time leaking pieces of your data so to extort you for the leaked data. We manage a practice called Cytactic, which is cyber crisis management, and we've seen organizations all over the world being targeted by ransomware attacks, and every time we are surprised and they are surprised how poorly they are ready for such an attack, because organizations invest tremendous amount of money in prevention. They put most of their effort, most of their capital, actually most of the resources in trying to prevent an attack. That's a very important part of the security ecosystem, trying to get the hacker not being able to manifest the attack. And prevention, as we know from antivirus, IPS, IDS, and many other protection mechanisms, and even prevention technologies like two-factor authentications and technologies around authentication, identification, all are very important. But what most organizations do not invest enough is first in detecting once the security failed and there is an incident. Most organizations realize that there was an incident hundreds of days after the incident started, and with ransomware, quite often we see that they could have detected when the attacker got into the organization or first machine got actually encrypted. But very often the time that they will detect it, it will be catastrophic, that they already have a large-scale incident. So let's give you an example. And hospitals all around the world saw the databases being encrypted. Just imagine how you provide medical health services when all your data is being locked. How do you deal with a bank or a financial institution that their customers' data is locked? And we see it again and again, and we see that organizations invest poorly in response. Once you have an incident, how you respond properly. And most of the time, if you prepared ahead of time for an incident, the impact of the incident or the kind of like the damage that it would inflict for you would be dramatically different if you prepared or not. Just to give an example, if you prepared ahead of time for data encryption, you probably had safe backups you could go and use, and the backups would not be contaminated. If you prepared for ransomware attack, probably after you identified one machine being encrypted, you would lock access to the other machines before you actually clean them. If you just prepared ahead of the time for a ransomware attack, you were probably even ready with procedures how to continue operation, even if some of your data is not available. We've seen organizations that actually are being brought to their knees because the data is being locked and it's a story that I think was heard in the Wall Street Journal last week. Let's assume you're a hospital and there was a story in a hospital in the US and for 3 months you don't have access to your records. And they needed to continue medical services, operations, and unfortunately, some people actually died or some people had their condition deteriorated because data was not available at the time of service. One could not identify that there is a problem with embryo. One could not identify that someone that needs to be fully monitored, the data is not now available as they used to. And the hospital didn't have any procedures, it's being detailed now in litigation, how to handle an incident that you would not have your records, or your records would be potentially not trustworthy. I think the best preparation for organization is to assume, even with the best security you'll have cyber incidents, you'll have crises. Preparing for an incident, having the crisis management protocol simulate for an incident and make sure that your sensitive assets are still protected and you have procedure how to handle it is essential.
All right, Dr. Kozlovski, thank you for keeping me company and breaking this all down for us with some really great examples. Thank you very much for being with us. Don't forget, Improvate is about making practical changes, exposing Israeli tech innovators to governments, investors, and companies around the globe, to promote businesses whose goal is innovation and helping countries further their development. The exposure right here at this conference is a first step with follow-ups from delegations and real business connections. All right, let's move now to ADRIAN VEVERA, a senior researcher, general director, and member of the scientific board of the National Institute for Research and Development in Informatics, ICI Bucharest. He's a doctor of military sciences and information and is both a lawyer and a nuclear physics engineer. He has extensive experience in the field of national security and has published widely on national and international security issues, energy security, cybercrime, critical infrastructure protection, and has been a coordinator of projects of national interest. Sir, first of all, thank you for joining us today. Now, if you could start by telling us about the impact of blockchain technology in the context of cybersecurity, especially in the area of financial transactions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, for your invitation, and it was a very good discussion until us, and I hope I can give my expertise here and discuss about impact of blockchain technology. Distributed ledger technology or blockchain has the potential to generate significant change in the landscape of the financial infrastructure, but also of other infrastructure. It is not just because of applications out of cryptocurrency. It's a small application if you compare with the all blockchain technology, but also smart contracts, distributed and autonomous organization, or decentralized marketplace accessible right from your wallet. What does this mean? Firstly, we have an explosion in new financial products and transactions, which is partly visible through the significant, often ridiculous price increases of cryptocurrency or of new products such as non-fungible tokens. It is not 100% due to some intrinsic worth of utility, but also a result of the huge financial stimulus enacted by the main players in the context of the coronavirus pandemic, which in the climate of economic uncertainty surrounding restriction response, found its way into speculative assets such as a real estate, the stock market, or the crypto market. All of these have experienced significant increases and will continue to do so as long as stimulus continues. Secondly, the main blockchain effect, it's the maintenance of trust in the context of demonetization. By eliminating the middleman, we eliminate a large part of the legitimate government control and safeguards in the financial system. There is not authority to appeal to if somebody hacks your wallet, which is why security culture among crypto users is beyond anything you see in the general population. And cyber criminals, cyber terrorists, or just plain criminals and terrorists, as well as rogue states like North Korea, have found a welcome environment in crypto for their activities. Money laundering, ransomware, terrorist financing, sanction boosting are all possible with cryptocurrency, in addition to other products application not yet understood. Maybe we'll see the terrorist communication to the cover of the minting of non-fungible tokens by encryption into visual or audio data. Or maybe it will become a new avenue also for propaganda. The so-called Islamic State could sell non-fungible tokens with propaganda messages that become viral. Thirdly, we cannot see easy ways to recover some of that control, especially when a large portion of the crypto user base has a libertarian mindset and is specifically development or using product that undermine control, such as decentralized marketplace and privacy coins. On some of these marketplaces, we even see tokenized version of stock such as Google, Tesla, and Microsoft. I talk about Luna Market, which is not even a gray area. So the revolution is going beyond the market for a new product. The authorities may say that they want to regulate crypto, but what they are achieving so far is to slowly define a government-controlled crypto area. Traditional banking, government-backed cryptocurrency, while using regulation such as anti-money laundering and know your customer regulation to intrude into the vast no-man land of the crypto space. The effects are welcome but limited so far. Right now, in my opinion, our best chance at regulation is by gatekeeping the laundering and know your customer regulation are a part of it, and will be partly effective as long as one still need a financial footprint outside of crypto, if only to use your illegally obtained money to buy a house or necessities. Otherwise, we have to get used to a much freer and consequently more dangerous crypto space, which will intrude into the rest of cyberspace. At the same time, and this brings me to my fourth point, we are seeing blockchain technology having an impact and a potential security impact outside of the financial space. Blockchain for supply chain management and control of origin, blockchain for public services, blockchain for data management. Maybe we will even see contracts and property deeds as non-fungible tokens, including fractional tokens. It is an exciting time, but I fear that we will see security impacts when this technology have increased rate of adoption. And the same quality, the make blockchain attractive and more secure in many ways, also increase its consequences should someone manage to truly subvert it. Imagine smart contracts running and you are powerless to stop them, or double counting in tokenized systems. Counterfeiting has never been so dangerous as in this world, where middleman authority has dropped and there are no longer competent final authority to appeal to. These are all systemic effects that will affect the landscape of critical infrastructure and the behavior of participants in the system, whatever operator, regulator, user, and so on. The problem is not just related to actual company or entity using blockchain systematically, but also they have acquired or they are exposed to blockchain subversion risks to a supplier. My fear is for when we will see blockchain adoption in entities running SCADA system, should an application be found with the profile of SCADA requirement of industrial control system in general, utilities, and so on. Since 2018, the National Institute for Research and Development in Informatics, ICI Bucharest, is constantly taking part in the new and emergent field of decentralized technology and science. It has successfully implemented diverse projects that have at their core the blockchain technology. These projects are applied in educational and administrative tasks, and for this task, we have created specialized centers such as the Executive Blockchain Laboratory, FCI, European Blockchain Services Infrastructure as a European Commission, ECHEB, European Center for Excellence in Blockchain, and BSDL, Blockchain Service Development Laboratory, and the Cryptocurrency Investigation and Compliance Center for Regulation and Support for National and European Authority. In October 2021, Izso Bucharest signed a partnership with Elrond, the Romanian blockchain company, for researching and development decentralized application in the area of domain name services as an anchor to upcoming trends in cybersecurity as a pillar 2, inter alia, financial transaction and e-study 4.0 issue. In conclusion, the proliferation or penetration of blockchain goes beyond the financial system and is not entirely positive, given the significant uncertainties surrounding and our difficulties regulated it.
Well, Dr. VEVERA, what are the critical infrastructure protection issues faced by Southeast European countries today?
Yeah, it's Southeast European countries face a very challenging and dynamic security environment with impact on critical infrastructure protection and governance. I can even say that almost all of the security issues in the Southeast European region can actually be explained in terms of critical infrastructure protection. My colleagues and I published a chapter with that exact idea in the volume Cyber Terrorism and Extremism as a Threat to Critical Infrastructure, published by the Minister of Defense of Slovenia and the Special Forces University in Tampa, Florida in 2020. The biggest issue in the region stem from the baseline characteristic of the critical infrastructure in the region, especially when we take Greece out of the equation. In many cases, critical infrastructure in the region are old, under-maintained, affected by conflict, fragmented, and lacking proper interconnectors. When it comes to digitalization, the future is already here, but it is unevenly distributed. We have layers of infrastructure, not just from various areas like analog and digital, but designed and built and organized under a radically different economic and political system. This means that the infrastructure landscape in the region is complex, maybe the most complex in Eurasia outside of the Balkans. And complexity means ambiguity and uncertainty with regards to the system of systems. It means that the interaction between infrastructure and the environment produce emergent behaviors that we cannot fully anticipate, leading to new risks, vulnerabilities, and threats. ICI Bucharest has a Department of Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Protection, and we have a significant interest in this area. So much so that we are involved in coordination European working groups on various issues. This problem of complexity is one that we hit our head on over and over again, and it will get worse, not better, as the region integrates it into a European market and supply and production chains. However, it is this integration that produces efficiency and new capabilities, so we must handle the resulting risk as well as we can. The first step is making sure that the critical infrastructure protection frameworks in the region keep up with developments and integrate the best practices from the UE and elsewhere. International cooperation is key in this regard. At the same time, we cannot deny that the security environment itself is a problem. It has been a crossroad region for a century, which was brought again into stark contrasting during the migrant crisis. It is a region of persistent conflict and animosity of ethnic, religious, and geopolitical lines. It is an area of competition between great and regional power, including Russia and Turkey. Wherefore, it has become a key battle group for hybrid warfare, which sees asymmetric and unconventional means used to target civilian infrastructure. Cyber attacks are a favorite tactic, since they are cheap, hard to detect, hard to attribute, and have great cost-benefit ratio. And the rapid digitalization everywhere in the world, including the region, has meant that security system and security culture have not kept pace with the surface of attack in the cyber area. I want to point out of the threat to critical infrastructure, also including fake news and disinformation, as we have seen during the pandemic When emergent or state-sponsored example of this affected the critical health infrastructure and the critical public administration infrastructure related to the fight against the pandemic. Hybrid warfare, as an umbrella term, is the #1 issue for the region, since it is the logical tools for any actor looking to advance through chaos and disruption. Lastly, I would emphasize the Southeast European region as a focus point for a geopolitical relevant critical infrastructure project, which adds a new dimension of complexity when it comes to economic warfare, lawfare, cyber attacks, and the growing importance of the region. We have the Belt and the Road Initiative. We have the 60+1 cooperation between China and Central and Eastern Europe, the 3 Seas Initiative, Turk Stream, the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline, which began operation in 2020, and I'm sure you remember old proposals such as the Nabucco and South Stream pipelines. The people of the region and their leaders place their hopes on switch project to rapidly reduce disparity with our region, but they also add new risks, vulnerability, and threats. Thank you.
Dr. VEVERA, thank you very much for joining us today at Improvate.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring the conversation back to the studio once again. Gilbert Ohana is co-founder and managing partner at FinTLV Ventures and is a cybersecurity advisor to financial companies. Thank you so much, Gilbert, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, what is unique about Israel's cyber ecosystem, and what is the foundation of its success?
So first, I would say that the Israeli ecosystem is unique not only in cybersecurity, but in a lot of other different domains, like life sciences, like medical devices, automotive, and food tech is now booming in Israel. But of course, in cybersecurity, the ecosystem is well known.
And that's what we're talking about today,
yeah,
cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some reasons for that. First, you know that there are a lot of startups in Israel, 8,300 startups, in which 500 of them are cybersecurity technologies and companies. And these companies attract a lot of investment from internal and foreign investors. Actually, I think that in 2021 alone, the first half of 2021, the amount of investment in Israel in cyber technologies was about $3.4 billion, which is like 40% out of the total amount of capital investment worldwide. So something is happening in the Israeli ecosystem around cyber. I think the two main reasons for that, the first one is the defense industry, including the military service. People getting a lot of experience in those places, you know, in defense, in the civilian defense industry and the military service, of course. And eventually they finish that and go out to the civilian life and form their companies. They bring to the civilians practices their expertise and know-how, but not only that, they bring also their ability to solve difficult problems, to think out of the box and build different kinds of technologies. And the second reason, I think, is related to a government resolution back in 2015, in which the government back then decided to establish the Cyber Directorate in Israel and to become among the top 5 nations in cybersecurity. That created a lot of activities in Israel, different kinds of investments. But one specific activity was the educational activity, a lot of studies around high schools on cyber and digital technologies, and of course, through higher studies. So these things together build the infrastructure of the capabilities of the cyber in Israel.
Fascinating. All right, we will continue to discuss this shortly, so please stay with us. But first, we're going to go to our next guest, Eva Maydell, who is a member of the European Parliament. She focuses on enhancing skills creation and the use of innovation and technologies, supporting entrepreneurs and investments in Europe and enhancing access to quality education. Thank you so much for joining us, Eva.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So what do you feel needs to be done to support entrepreneurs to digitize and improve their cybersecurity?
Well, so first of all, I think what 2020 showed us is this global shift to remote and hybrid work. So in a way, it forced organizations to reinvent the way they operate practically overnight. So there hasn't been, however, a single day almost that has passed over the past year without hearing about some quite big cyber attacks. So what I want to say, first of all, is that normalizing cyber incidents cannot be the path ahead of us. We must have a very clear and robust answer to this. We need, on one hand, strong cybersecurity and defense. We also need technological know-how for countering such attacks. And most importantly, a high level of cyber resilience, ideally done through skilled professionals. And this is why I am currently working on the directive of the EU on network and information security, is the review of that directive, because what we want to achieve is to, on one hand, improve coordination, and in this way improves national cybersecurity strategies. In the same time, we want to make sure we have excellent cyber skills at any level, really, whether it is on detection, on deterrence, on mitigation, or resolution of incidents. And also, lastly, to improve capacities and improving resilience to cyber attacks. When it comes to businesses, when it comes to entrepreneurs, I have prepared, together with experts, a small handbook with the main pillars of how to keep a good cyber strategy for SMEs. We know that especially smaller companies are often having a false sense of security because they're not necessarily an interesting target. But this is false because with the increase of interconnectedness, an attack on a service provider may cause the entire business to collapse. So we need to make sure that it's every entity that takes cybersecurity as a priority and finds the right ways to address probable issues in the future.
Ms. Maydell, you are EPP Group Coordinator for the Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence in a Digital Age. Can you tell us more about that and how the EU plans to utilize artificial intelligence?
So first of all, yes, I am the speaker for the largest political group in the Parliament on the Committee on AI. It's a special committee, it's a temporary committee for the time being, and it kind of aims to be the forum, the place where we're gonna meet, and we already did so over the past year, experts from around the world with whom we can define how would AI develop in the years to come and what should be the response of regulators. So let me first maybe highlight the dimension of the AI revolution that has been at the center of debate in this committee over the past couple of months. We have to know that our daily lives are so much based already on AI advice. By the way, we go to work, come back at home, our purchases, even our dating life, the ads we see, movies, political commentary, everything is based on a good job done or a bad job done by AI. AI is a prediction machine, and by any moment it becomes better at its job. I doubt that there is a routine task that cannot be done better and cheaper by AI at the time being. So this is why in the Parliament we have the committee to look into the impact of AI in virtually every sector of the economy and society. So what I think our goal has to be, first of all, catch up to other economies like China and the US in certain fields where Europe is lagging behind. Second, to strengthen our own fields of AI leadership. We have a great academic base. We are strong in AI-led robotics. We have knowledge on how to introduce AI into the industry, into SMEs. And I think this is a distinct focus on decentral and data-light AI transparency, the safety we have in Europe. I think this should be our second focus. And lastly, thirdly, provide the EU and, as we hope, the world with standards, with regulation that decrease insecurities, that create a more positive network effect. And as a side effect, this could lead us to have EU AI based products to get a good head start. I have to, as a last comment, I have to stress that we don't regulate to shut out competitors. We don't want to regulate to be protectionist. I think the global economy should compete in Europe, and Europe should compete globally. I think it is key that this competition will be based on clear laws, on values, and ensure that we don't go through another round of problems which we can face in the digital revolution. So this is what we try to do in the committee. Our report will be out in November. Then we'll be discussing it, amending it, and in 2022, by March, we should have our final conclusions on that report.
All right, Eva, Maydell, thank you so much for those important points, and thank you for contributing to Improvate today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, let's go back to President Rosen Plevneliev. Another question for you, sir. Are you still hanging around with us?
Absolutely, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, technology moves at, of course, breakneck pace, and so do cyber threats. How do countries and companies stay ahead in this cat and mouse game?
Well, we just heard what young and future promising leaders like Madam Eva Maydell are thinking and doing, and that's so great because what governments have to do, it's so simple. We believe in free and fair trade. We believe in free and fair competition. We believe that in business, when you give a hand, you will be given a hand. So we have a fair deal. And that's why we need governments. Governments that create institutions and rules. And those rules have to apply for everyone. Actually, what we admire about the ecosystem in Israel is that how government and private sector come together in an effort for transparency, efficiency, so that people are served and people feel safe and people go to get the good services. The European Union itself, and Bulgaria is a very proud member of the European Union, is proud of its rules and institutions. And that is why I would really welcome the European Union and the governments within the European Union, first of all, to create a very vibrant ecosystem, as you do it in Israel. We haven't, but Israel is really unique. And second, really work on creating rules and regulations and institutions that do not serve anybody first, like we saw in the past years, but serve free and fair trade, free and fair competition. And then you will see the dramatic big market of the European Union really being a place where everybody will try to compete because of its fairness and because of its good regulation. So technologies is moving. Israel is on the cutting edge of that, but so also regulation has to come in. Both of them hand in hand together so that we have a free and a fair business environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I'd like to introduce another guest joining us now in the studio, His Excellency Reta Nega Alemu. He's Ambassador and Special Envoy of Ethiopia to Israel. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We will get to you in just a moment, I promise. All right, Mr. Ohana, I'd like to ask you another question. Now, you are a former head of the IDF's Elite Technology and Intelligence Unit. Just how critical are units such as this 8200 to Israel's success in cyber tech?
Sure. So just a correction, I was the Chief Technology Officer of the unit, not the head of the unit.
All right.
Yeah, obviously, Unit 8200, there are a lot more other technological units in the IDF and intelligence corps. They all have their parts, but obviously Unit 8200 is like a significant part in the ecosystem in Israel.
It seems to be the most high profile anyway.
And it's became a brand like in the last, 10, 15 years. When I was enlisted to the unit, it wasn't supposed to be named in the media. But I think, yeah, that there is no such unit elsewhere in the world, because the unit receives young people at the age of 18, which become responsible for challenges in the level of national security, reporting to very high-ranked officials in the army and outside in the government. They get a lot of responsibility to solve difficult challenges, working in a stressful environment, and eventually becoming like owners of this project that they are responsible for. I think that gives them unique capabilities eventually to become entrepreneur once they go out to the civilian industry. And you see that many of them eventually do form companies, and they get in the service not only the expertise around cyber, they also get these unique values that every entrepreneur needs to take initiative, to be persistent, to set goals and achieve them, to work in collaboration with other teams. I think those are quite unique objectives that values that they receive. So eventually they go out to the civilian life and they form companies. They bring different kind of thinking to those challenges. Many of them, for example, have experience at the offensive side. So they know how hackers think and work. They are familiar with these practices. And now they can design solutions that try to mitigate those practices and ways that hackers work. I think this is a unique value they have, enabling them to create solutions that do not exist elsewhere. And eventually we see in Israel a lot of these veterans form companies, maybe sometimes for the second time and third time after maybe a successful exit or a closing of a company. And I think that's the basic thing.
Right.
The culture in the unit is like a risk-taking approach. Try and try again. Fail, but do not be afraid to fail. And these values are unique, and you cannot get them elsewhere.
It seems that some of those failures have led to many successes.
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Ohana, thank you. Let's move on to you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you again for joining me today. Really appreciate it. So, as Africa undergoes rapid economic growth, its exposure to cyber threats is increasing, of course. Is Africa sufficiently prepared to provide an effective response to these increasing threats?
I say yes. If we look into the African Union Agenda 2063, which is focused on transforming Africa. In that context, the African Union has said that looking into the benefits of cyberspace, that it became cybersecurity is a key priority to ensure the emerging technologies are in the streamline of African economic development. In that context, African countries are working in tandem in 5 priority areas. One, the first priority area that they're focusing is creating a national institution that will focus on cybersecurity. 2, developing policies and legal framework in that context to enhance their capability to counter all cyber crimes. 3, they are also developing manpower, the capabilities in terms of teaching and training the youth to understand the trends in cybersecurity. And the 4th one is awareness creation at the larger level to the society and to all relevant institutions. And the 5th one is also governments have been working in creating intra-agency platforms so that the entire nation has the necessary preparation and capability in that regard.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Ohana, I want to speak to you once again about your company, FinTLV. If you can tell me a bit about the exciting technologies you have in your portfolio over there.
Sure. So FinTLV is a venture capital fund, which is mainly focused on insurance. Within that, we do cyber insurance, but we are mainly focused on the broader aspect of insurance. We have 14 companies in our portfolio investing in Israel, in the US, Europe. So I want to mention about 4 companies, if that's okay.
Sure.
Hippo Insurance and Next Insurance are both Israeli companies that are completely changing the insurance market. They are totally digital companies using a lot of data to assess the risk and create automatic processes, seamless processes with their customers. Hippo is doing that on the homeowner insurance, and Next Insurance is doing that on the small and business, small medium businesses market and freelancers providing customized policies. We have Corvus Insurance in our portfolio, which is a cyber insurance company, a US-based company, which very sophisticated, selling insurance, cyber insurance to small and medium businesses to protect their continuous of operation, which is today the most growing domain of insurance worldwide, as we are discussing the challenges of cyber. And lastly, there is a very interesting company called Switch, which is an Israeli company, early stage company, and they operate in the healthcare space, and they provide technologies and AI-based technologies that can prevent, or they can manage the pre-diabetes and diabetes chronic situations, which in the health space, this is like the biggest challenge for insurance company around health insurance. I think that the numbers are that in the next few years, 50% of the population worldwide will have diabetes, and 90% out of the medical expenses in the US are related to diabetes and other chronic diseases. And they have this very smart AI technology that can prevent diabetes or help you manage your conditions once you have it through customized recommendations for a better lifestyle.
Wow. Right, Mr. Ohana, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, before we move on, I just wanted to remind our viewers that Improvate is about making practical changes, exposing Israeli tech innovators to governments, investors, and companies around the globe to promote businesses whose goal is innovation and helping countries further their development. The exposure right here at this conference is a first step, with follow-ups from delegations and real business connections. Okay, let's move now to Dr. George Sharkov. He's a consultant to the EU on cybersecurity. He holds a PhD in artificial intelligence and previously served as a national cybersecurity coordinator for the Bulgarian government. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me, the third in a row conference of Improvate, and happy to be with you.
We're very happy to have you, of course. Now, in the digital age, modern societies are globally interconnected and increasingly dependent on IT systems and digital infrastructures. Is enough attention being paid at the national level in Europe to building cyber resilience?
Well, I would say till 5 years ago, cyber resilience was still a kind of unknown terminology or not stated as a goal. We were mainly talking about cybersecurity strategies, and so on. That was also related to national strategies and policies at the European level as well. I would say we were among the pioneers in my capacity of National Cybersecurity Coordinator, leading the establishment of National Cybersecurity Strategy to define as a goal cyber resilient society, cyber resilient country. That's why we put as a title of our national strategy back in 2016, Cyber Resilient Bulgaria 2020, which is extended now as a goal. And resilience became a focus not only because of the, let's say, the fashion of this terminology, but also understanding the insufficiency of the term security, because you can secure or you can protect against known things, against known vulnerabilities, threats, and so on. So the things that you can observe somehow. And that's not enough, because as you mentioned, that's the globally digitally connected society, digital economy, and so on. When everything is connected, there are a lot of hidden threats, there are a lot of hidden actors, and there are, the way we call it, a lot of unknown unknowns. So the way also the attacks or failures of our systems even happen, and this was proven by the large cyber attacks or cyber/hybrid with the kinetic effect attacks happening last years. Not only the ransom, not only blocking the colonial pipeline, but a lot of other services, digitally based services that became vulnerable to unknown previously threats and actions. So therefore, resilience became a focus at the national level, but also related to the critical infrastructures, because it is very essential, the critical infrastructures, and to be resilient, not only to be secure enough, but also to be able to face unknown attacks, unknown failures, and as well to recover from that state. And this is also the focus of the newest proposal for a new EU directive back in December, along with the new Network Information Security 2 directive and the implementation of Cybersecurity Act. But that directive is targeting exactly the critical entities, so the extension of the critical infrastructure in Europe from the classical transport and energy sectors, but also to banking, financial markets, health, and so on. So more than 10 sectors, the way it is called critical entities, but also the important entities which need to be resilient as well, like postal services, courier, waste management, manufacturing, and public administration services as well. So resilience became a focus, and this is along with the cybersecurity, both at the national and the European level, especially required for the critical infrastructure.
So with that said, how does the EU cybersecurity certification scheme fit into all that?
Well, this is part of the implementation of the requirements. So first, with the Network Information Security Directive, we were talking about the cyber hygiene at different levels and requirements, and apparently that's not enough. Just defining the requirements or promoting these requirements or having some recommendation, that's not enough. Somehow you have to assess, somehow you have to certify that we have achieved this specific level. In addition, it was recognized that we have different types of activities or profiles that need to be certified, and these are both like products and services, but also organizations and processes and business processes as well. So therefore, one essential component of the Cybersecurity Act, which is enforced since June 2019, is exactly the definition of or the implementation of cybersecurity framework based on the cybersecurity schemes. And this activity is ongoing, and I'm part of the stakeholder cybersecurity certification group coordinated by EMEA, where we have the opinions and the evaluation of the cybersecurity certification frameworks and schemes, and that will be mandatory, essential for all the services, all the products that are provided, offered in European Union, but it is already adopted by non-European Union countries as well, like partner countries, and this is related to the first cybersecurity certification schemes, the EU common criteria, based on common criteria ISO standard, well established, and then we have the one in cloud services, and first of the sectorial so-called cybersecurity certification schemes for 5G operators. There are schemes coming for IoT, Internet of Things, smart devices, but also industrial smart devices and so on. And also there is an important link to which is not the subject yet of the cybersecurity certification schemes, but what Ms. Maydell mentioned, it is about the new technologies, especially artificial intelligence. So there is a parallel activity, but they are coordinated activities how to certify and how to assess actually the trustworthiness and technical robustness of the AI-based solutions in parallel to the legal framework and also the ethics guidelines that have been developed.
And as a, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to ask you, as a consultant to the EU, can you tell us about cooperation between the EU and Israel on national cybersecurity, and also about the business potential for Israeli cybersecurity companies in the EU at large, specifically in the Balkan region where you come from?
Oh, thank you. The answer to this question could take half a day. That's a lot of thank you.
We have a lot of time.
Quite an experience in that direction. So I would say maybe at the very beginning at EU level, but also I can speak about on behalf of Bulgaria, but also the region that we're Southeastern Europe, that our European Software Institute operates. And there's quite extensive collaboration and long-term partnership in the R&D research and development projects. So Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, and a lot of research programs. Israel is among the major consortium partners. It's about not only about cybersecurity, but about the digital transformation, about the services, digitized services, and of course about the new technologies, new potentials like quantum computing, the cybersecurity, security of AI, and so on. So one large area, and that's not only about the universities or research centers in Israel we collaborate extensively with, but and also building the joint capacity in bilateral way or bilateral manner with different countries. I would say, like in Bulgaria, we have with Blavatnik Institute, for example, joint capacity or twinning project, together with the Defense Institute, building capacity, and a lot of bilateral agreements with different countries. It's like Slovenia, like Romania, and many other countries around in the region that I know, for building capacity, education, training. That's one area. In this direction, also Israeli companies that are very active with their R&D and innovation products, they are quite active as well. And I would mention here, in addition to those categories or type of activities related to capacity building, a lot of solutions, let's say, or joint projects, and both for capacity building, training, education, but also business solutions with Israeli companies. In Bulgaria, at least, I know more than 20 branches of Israeli companies, software and cybersecurity-related development companies. That's not only about outsourcing. I would say this is it's more in direction of using innovation capacity or creative capacity, but also establishing this longer-term presence in Europe, as we know, related to services, digital services, cybersecurity. You need to have a presence in Europe or local facilities as well, data facilities related to GDPR and so on. So there is business interest as well. Several Bulgarian companies from the telecom sector, that's where they came from, they partner and they provide, they implement solutions provided by Israeli companies, but also in the area of cybersecurity, like Security Operations Center as a service, using mainly software and solutions provided by Israeli companies, but not only integrated with other solutions. And in our field, cybersecurity lab, education, training, capacity building with the cyber ranges. That's not only exercising also the operating procedures and building skills, competencies, but also that is related to the cybersecurity certification schemes, because at the higher level of certification, we need these ranges and we need the red teams and we need to perform penetration testing for the product. So capacity building, as far as I know, in Eastern Europe, there are no such testing laboratories at that level that they can provide the future European certification scheme requirements for high level of assessments. So those are partnering, different directions of partnering, and of course a lot of sales activities provided for both for public and private sector as well.
George Sharkov, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for fitting so much information in such a small amount of time. Thank you, really appreciate it. All right, one more question for Mr. Ohana. Thank you for staying with us all this time. So financial services companies are obviously very attractive targets for cyber criminals. What is the state of cybersecurity in these companies, and what kind of risk management strategies should they be adopting?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, the financial sector is one of the most targeted sectors. I think it's number 3 after healthcare and government agencies. But they do suffer, the financial sector do suffer the highest cost in terms of cybercrime, because obviously most of the crimes are financially related. And I think that these challenges for the financial sector will only increase. Since they are dealing and investing a lot in new technology trends that opens new kinds of risks. Digital transformation that the banking is going through with the transition to cloud technologies, open banking, which opens up data and services of banks and other financial companies to external parties, and working from home. Which was like imposed on many sectors and companies, also imposes a great risk. So I think they need to, of course, see and validate their cybersecurity posture management in a very broad set of domains. But besides the obvious, I think that the former guests a little bit address the obvious measures need to be taken. I think that companies need to invest more on the resilience capability, which is like the response and recovery procedures, which companies do not tend to do that so much. I think this is of great value. Another thing I think is to perform and execute like training for top management and board of directors, executing breach detection and response simulations. They have great value because they can expose the procedures the companies are missing on one hand, and on the other hand, they enable the participants to get accustomed to the stress involved in decision-making when there is a breach happening. And I think lastly, cyber insurance, which is also a practice that at least small and medium businesses do not tend to take so much. Cyber insurance is very important. It does not cover all aspects of a damage, but obviously it can be of great help if a breach is happening. And cyber insurance is getting more and more mature, and cyber insurance companies are getting more and more centralized position in helping the customer not only to remediate once there is a breach, but also to protect and prevent such kind of events.
Absolutely. Gilbert, Ohana, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your insights. All right, it's time now to turn to our special guest today, Mr. Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov became the under-18 chess champion of the USSR at the age of 12 and the world under-20 champion at 17. He came to international fame at the age of 22 as the youngest world chess champion in history in 1985. Kasparov's famous matches against the IBM supercomputer Deep Blue in 1996 and 1997 were key to bringing artificial intelligence and chess into the mainstream. They also sparked his passionate interest in AI and the human relationship with our increasingly intelligent machines. He retired from professional chess in 2005. He's the chairman of the New York-based Human Rights Foundation, ambassador for Avast Software, where he discusses cybersecurity and the digital future, and to the executive board of the Foundation for Responsible Robotics. In 2017, he founded the Renew Democracy Initiative, dedicated to promoting the principles of the free world. The US-based Kasparov Chess Foundation nonprofit promotes the teaching of chess in education systems around the world. Kasparov is the author of 3 books, How Life Imitates Chess, Winter is Coming, and Deep Thinking, Where Machine Intelligence Ends and Human Creativity Begins. Mr. Kasparov also recently joined Improvate's advisory board. Hello, Mr. Kasparov. It is such an honor to have you with us again. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for sharing these pictures that remind me of the golden era where machines were weak and my hair was strong. Always happy to join Improvate. It's a bit early here, so that's why I wear my headset, because I just don't want the sound to be killed in the apartment. Everybody's still asleep in New York. It's 5:45. But I'm looking very much for my first appearance live, in person at another Improvate conference at the end of November. So November 29th. So I will be in Jerusalem joining Improvate conference. Again, then I don't need all these kind of precautions, and I'm sure we'll have even a lively and more in-depth conversation about these issues.
Definitely. Now, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Kasparov, in recent years, we've seen many high-level data leaks, such as the Pandora Papers that were made public a couple of weeks ago. It seems no one is immune to data leaks. Government, corporations, the military, there are countless cybersecurity technologies to protect data from external hacks. But what can be done to protect data integrity within organizations from lone wolf and collaborator malicious insiders? Is AI the answer?
Look, in the free world, it's in a free market. So it's bad news for some means good news for others. So if you have a hole in the roof, that offers work for a carpenter. If you have a cybersecurity hole, it offers a lot of work opportunities for many people here today. But again, just to be on a serious note, so I have to say that though you mentioned I've been working for 5 years with Avast Software as their security ambassador. I know the limits of my ignorance, and I'm not a tech expert per se, but I know something which is very, very important, and this is the area of my interest and expertise. It's human-machine collaboration, which is becoming increasingly complex. And this is, by the way, it's a core issue for all the problems we're discussing today. So you mentioned Pandora, I think Pandora boxes, because they were Panama Papers. It's easy to mix them. And by the way, I'm not so sure, that this kind of leaks, we should be complain about, because it helped us to expose corruption all over the place. Though while in democratic countries it led to the collapses of the government, in Russia it was probably another opportunity to boast their wealth for corrupt Putin's cronies. But it's while we're talking about this kind of breaches and leaks, we should separate it in 2 parts. The person, the individual problems, and we can talk separately about them, and about corporate problems. But as I said, at the end of the day, we're still talking about human factors, because it's all about humans. It's all these leaks happen when there's the human intent, whether it's a good intent or malign intent, but still behind it. And we should also just recognize that if you create so much data, these data will never be 100% safe, because you can have the best lock in the world, but if the key from this lock is in the hands of somebody you don't trust, so what can you do? So again, it's no matter how was the hack organized, you still have people behind it, and on both sides. On one side, those who are attacking; on the other side, those who made mistakes, who were complacent. It could be a result of negligence. There's no magic pill that or magic wand that could help you to solve these problems. It's a very routine process, and again, it's as always, you have sword and shield, and again, simply imposing more and more regulations is not going to stop bad guys from attacking, because I heard one example from very famous cryptographer, and and security expert Bruce Schneier. So it's a legendary guy in this industry, and he talked about it's a famous story in San Francisco where there were few suicide cases, people jumping off the high office buildings. So the city wanted to respond, and the first response was, we have to seal all the windows at the top floors. And then the second one, so this is we have to make sure that the glass is so strong, so it's shatterproof, so for people who couldn't get through. And Bruce said, okay, the next one probably the response should be you have to eliminate windows at the top of the buildings. So again, it's just simply trying just to put all these regulations in place is not going to solve the problems. Like, you don't like people speeding up because it could lead to disasters on the road, accidents. But so if you simply just okay, say that it's not, it doesn't work, it's, many people get violated. But are you going just to start, forcing cars or manufacturing cars that cannot go higher than this limit? Again, not an answer. So again, the answer is very much human, and its answer is very much connected to our understanding. So how this human-machine collaboration is going to work in our favor, because it will always be a balance. It's a trade-off. There's no simple win-win combination. So you win some, you lose some. The important thing that the balance will be in our favor.
Sir, you've stated in the past that we're in a cyber Cold War, and that the West must create, a deterrence against Russia and China, but lacks the political will. How does one create a cyber deterrence?
The key is what you just said: political will. Because at the end of the day, it's when we're talking about now the state sponsored attacks, like coming from Russia. Most likely from China, though in China we don't have the same clear proof that it was authorized on the highest level, but we all understand how the communist system works. And of course we can mention the smaller countries, but they still do similar things like dictatorships like Iran, North Korea, and not even talking about some quasi state organizations that are also following the same example. It's about the price that the attacker pays for violating the security norms. And unfortunately today, what we see that from the Putin's perspectives, I can talk about Russia because I know it's much better than China, but same applies to China. There is no price to pay. We heard that at the meeting in Geneva, President Biden looked at Putin's eyes and told him, "Don't do this," whatever. I guess again we could read it, in the report from the American side. And so what? Yeah, Putin doesn't care about words. Dictators don't care about words. They never ask why. They ask why not. And why not? Just price is either non-existent or irrelevant from their perspectives. So as long as the American administration shows no appetite for confrontation, no appetite, to put pressure, real pressure, follow the money, start, punishing Putin's oligarchs, start, creating, conditions where Russian state businesses could be in jeopardy, like Nord Stream 2. So yeah, it's from Putin's perspective, they're just mere words, lip service. And recently we saw the confession of one of the high officials of the administration that Russia is still, the number one threat. So for critical infrastructure, but also we saw the report from Microsoft saying that 58% of the attacks hacking attacks comes from Russia. So it's a clear case, that the lack of political will thereof, it's not just it doesn't stop, but it also emboldens dictators to move forward. And of course, the cooperation between Americans and Europeans is important. But again, Europeans show very little appetite and or zero political will, or even worse, the willingness to actually to cooperate with dictators on some business projects, and ignoring the fact that these countries like Russia and China, they create a real existential threat to cybersecurity, whether it's on the state level, company levels, or individual level. And again, it's a political solution. And so far, again, we know that neither Europe nor America just are showing any appetite and demonstrating political will to fight back. We recently saw how the Google and Apple removed the Alexei Navalny's application just before this fake elections in Russia under the pressure from Russian government. So though I think Google actually restored this application online, but the fact is that dictators can use business connections and the offices of the respective companies in Russia, threatening to arrest and harass their employees and to force these companies to do the bidding for these dictators. It's a political issue. So the simple answer, coming from cybersecurity experts, is not going to help us very much.
Well, with that said, the Internet of Things is connecting our entire world to the web, creating more potential cyber threats. How can we protect ourselves in this interconnected world?
Look, again, so we should talk about us, about human mistakes, because it's 90% or probably more of all the accidents, all trouble that happens with our mobile devices. They come as a result of negligence, complacency, and ignorance. We all know now, especially during the pandemics, that you have to wash your hands, just to kill some microbes. You have to brush your teeth. But people just do not follow the same elementary precautions by using their mobile devices. So though they're very important, and everybody wants to know what can we do, to stop these attacks on our devices. And there are, as we speak, there are millions and millions of attacks now going around the world. So what is required is an understanding that it's the most of the customers. I said we may talk about lion's share, 90% or more, are just not paying attention to these problems. People still using elementary passwords like 1 to 8 or 1 to 9. That's the two most popular passwords. They just don't they don't follow advice of experts. Just are not using the machine generated passwords because they're too complicated to remember. And it's again, they don't want any complex. I don't know. I wouldn't call them complex, but solutions that are not very primitive. And when you mentioned IoT, that's the source of real problem. It's a real challenge, and it's a gold mine for hackers around the world, because IoT now is so popular that people people are delighted to have many devices connected. So you have many. By the way, do you have IoT device at home yourself? Do you have things connected? I'm just also curious. Always ask people who interview me whether they have device at home. So now, one thing to remember, that if you have many devices at home, from that control your light, or the coffee machine, or a washing machine, so they all connected in one system, but the resilience of your system depends on the weakest device. One device that offers little resistance, could be an entry port for a hacker. And the problem is that many famous, manufacturers, famous, trademarks, companies that have been doing, things like, the freezers and coffee machines and other, home appliances, they had almost no experience in cybersecurity. They don't know how to guarantee the protection of their devices that are being connected to IoT. So by adding more and more elements into this IoT system at home, you are just giving more chances. It's like an open invitation to a hacker to find a weak spot. And it's happening, just simply, it's just by doing phishing, but just they go around. It's not that they are aiming at you, but as you go around, the millions of hacking attacks, opportunities like they are just, searching for entry port. And now we just, by our complacency, we offer them real opportunities. Yeah, and again, it's speaking about phishing, so I can also mention ransomware. And again, it's also psychological. It's more psychological than technical, because in every story that we're discussing now, it's this, you can see exploitation of our habits and our weaknesses. So that's why I would like to emphasize, just to summarize what I said, that there is no purely technical solution. At the end of the day, it's about educating people, and it's about them, the customers, to recognize a simple thing, that if you are willing to sacrifice your security, your privacy for convenience, so you eventually pay the price.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It is always a pleasure having you. We will certainly see you next month on November 29th.
Yes, absolutely.
At our next event.
Yes. The traditional Jewish saying next year in Jerusalem, but we say next month in Jerusalem.
Absolutely, next month in Jerusalem. And I'm going home now to unplug all my devices after that speech. Definitely.
No, just pay attention. And by the way, just never use a default mode. Make sure that, because often, they have the instruction at page 85 of 120 pages of instructions. And of course, you never read it, but the hacker does. Remember that.
All right.
Thank you.
Always read the manual, Mr. Kasparov.
Yes,
thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, back to the studio now. Joining us is retired Major General Amos Gilad, Executive Director of the Institute for Policy and Strategy at the IDC Herzliya, and is the chairman of the Institute's annual Herzliya Conference series. He's also a member of the Improvate Advisory Board. Thank you for joining me again today.
Thank you very much.
So, we've heard a lot recently on the danger of using Chinese companies for technological infrastructures, and the United States is pressuring many countries, including Israel, not to use Chinese systems such as Huawei's 5G infrastructure. What is your opinion on the matter?
From the perspective of national security, we must be sensitive to the request from the United States, the only real ally we do have in the world, major pillar in our national security. On the other hand, to boycott China, the leading locomotive of the economy of the world, it's not so smart. So we need to find the path. The path is always defined by the national security needs. If our secrets are a danger, that means that we need to take the precautions in order to avoid them. It's like, generally speaking, how to do it in details, that's the art of the anti-cyber warfare or attacks that we are suffering, like other parts of the world. Unlike China is not enemy of Israel. Iran is the enemy of Israel. They want, on one hand, to steal our secrets, but to have access to carry out operational, concrete actions against Israel. That's not the case by China or others, like you have just mentioned, Russia. So we need to take it very seriously. The solution is, I don't believe in deterrence that is not based on real counter actions against the attacker, because always they are denying. What you need, first of all, is the right technology. I think in Israel we are leading. To deter China or to deter Russia by threats, I'm not sure they are so much impressed by it.
All right, we will come back to you soon. Thank you for that. My next question is for you, Ambassador Alemu. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation in Ethiopia last year when the Ethiopian Information Network Security Agency thwarted a major cyber attack from the Cyber Horus Group, I believe it was called?
Well, Ethiopia has built the Ethiopian Information Security Agency, has been there for many years, has developed its capabilities in various ways. When we have built adequate infrastructure, we have also have trained manpower, and in developing that capability, the major aim was to be able to control and counter all cyber threats that comes from outside and from within. And in that context, last year, the Ethiopian Information Network Security Agency has thwarted many cyber attacks, as you said, that are directed at various levels towards our economy, towards our political and social systems. One of which was mainly focused on in terms of the second the second phase filling of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which in fact the reference that you made in that is what the Information Network Security Agency has thwarted. But these security threats comes from different directions, and the National Security Agency has created a strong platform, one in terms of capacity building, training all relevant agencies to have adequate knowledge and awareness in cybersecurity, and two, in terms of creating a legal framework to counter and combat all cyber crimes. These are the at least the modalities in which we have created to counter cyber attacks and cyber crimes.
Interesting. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
Ari Franklach is the founder of Protex, the industry's first security platform for B2C communication. He's an entrepreneur with a proven record of growing business from startup to international multi-million-dollar company, and offers an impressive background of over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity and telecom industries. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course. Now, if you could start by telling us what security issues you have identified in the telecommunications field that are matters of, a global concern.
So as you told, I'm more than 20 years in telecom industry, and I've seen development of the telecom industry from big bottoms phones to very advanced smartphones that we have now. But that's more on the device side. What we have in the telecom networks, because the network side actually didn't change for many, many years. And the major problem of all telecom networks is a security breach. Okay, all these security networks are much less secure than internet, for example, and we see many, many problems in telecom related to information leak. Okay, most of the information is not encrypted and not protected. Authentication hijacking, where actually criminals can hijack the identity of both senders and receivers of messages. And as a result, a lot of phishing attacks. So in the last 3 years, there is a significant increase in phishing attacks in the world, and not only phishing attacks, but a lot of crimes related to the telecom. We just got a latest FBI report for 2020, and we see that 3 out of 5 major types of attacks are related to telecoms. So that's the major issue that we have in telecom, and we must protect it somehow.
So you mentioned phishing a bunch of times, but if you could explain to us, what is smishing?
So smishing is actually a kind of phishing, where the phishing is done through SMS. So smishing is the first word of SMS. Also, SMS is a very old technology. We see a very significant increase in enterprise to person SMSs in the world. So all of you receive a lot of SMSs from different banks and financial companies and notifications, delivery, and whatever. And the smishing actually hijacking of the sender and asking information on behalf of sender. So when criminal, for example, what you see now, send an SMS from the name of PayPal, you receive it as a regular SMS from PayPal, and most of people assume that's SMS from PayPal. They click the link in the message, and actually go to a criminal's website. At this same point of time, the criminal has your ID, your password, and can steal anything from.
I get those kind of messages all the time.
All the time, so be careful.
Yeah, definitely. So how does Protect solve, the issues that we're discussing now?
So we implemented different types of technology, but the general idea is to look at the telecom as the whole ecosystem, which you cannot change. Okay, the telecom is very complex, and many companies in the world tried to change telecom, including Apple, including Google, and it's very difficult. They live their own life. So what we actually do, we look at the telecom industry as an existing ecosystem, and we've built a blockchain or more DLT network on top of telecom. So we look at the telecom as a transport layer, and everything which is actually the real information which is transferred over protected and secured DLT network. So again, as you can see an example, this is a regular SMS that usually sent by PayPal, DHL, Google to the user, and anyone in the network can see the text. Okay, now if we apply our technology, and if you can switch the slide, actually what criminal will see, the criminal that hijacks the SMS, it will see something which is completely encrypted and cannot do anything with this specific message. So this is a major idea of our technology. Of course, it has a lot of different things, but that's the major idea, to look at the telecom network as an ecosystem, as a black box, and to build a shadow network on top of it. Like once HTTPS actually came to the regular HTTP, to the regular internet, and protected it on top. So that's actually what we do for telecom networks.
So obviously, telecoms is not something new. It's been around for decades. So why now?
Many reasons why now, but I think the three major reasons. First is the digital transformation that we see the last 5 years, especially boosted by COVID. So everything that 5 years were offline is getting online now. All the e-commerce and the travel and the banking. So everything online now, and actually this industry is growing 100% every year. And of course, it's much more interesting to criminals to go to this industry and to perform different types of attack. The second issue is regulations issue. So again, 3-5 years ago, when we spoke to different regulators around the world, they did not understand what is this, or what we are talking about. Why fraud? Telecom is completely protected. No one can do anything. Now regulators start to understand that the fraud issue in telecom is very significant, and they start to allow different protection companies, cybersecurity companies, to come into this industry and to help telecom operators to protect. And the third, of course, the criminals themselves. So the criminals are always trying to find the weakest link, the weakest chain. And now actually telecom is becoming the weakest chain. All the rest is more protected than telecom. So it's much easier for them to go to and attack telecom. And that's why actually we think now is the time.
Well, you must have other competing companies in this field. So how do you stand out against the rivals?
Again, because our project I already spoke, we protect the entire ecosystem. Okay, we don't try to protect every specific chain inside the telecom. We are not trying to come to the telecom and say, guys, okay, buy $3 million technology from us, and we will protect your network. We're actually applying to the enterprises, to the same PayPals that are affected by the fraud, and we provide them a very, very simple solution, almost SaaS solution that they don't need to install anything on their side. They just need to use our technology, and actually we cover all three major elements, three major risk of the telecom. One is the authentication, the second is the data integrity and data protection, and third is the customer protection. So that's why we think we are unique, and not many others are doing it in the same approach.
Interesting. Ari, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Gilad, another question for you. Thank you for staying with us. How well prepared do you think Israel is for a multi-dimensional attack that includes possibly critical civilian infrastructure?
It's an ongoing war. Never be smug, never be happy with yourself, and fight all the time, 24/7. Thanks God, we are leading in technology. It comes from the military, it comes from our industries, it comes from our unique cooperation because we are highly valued by our partners, leading partners in the world, so the cooperation is very efficient. However, the enemy is very dangerous, and they are determined. And there are two kinds of enemies, as I've just mentioned. The superpowers that we know who are they, that they want the information, the technology, and the real enemy, like Iran, that they want to attack Israel, to hurt Israel, and to cause damage, strategic damage to Israel, and to cause damage to civilian infrastructure. Here are some kinds of solutions. First of all, high level of protection. Secondly, deterrence here, very valuable. If Iran attacks Israel, for example, even without taking responsibility, there are some counter attacks that nobody takes responsibility, but it's very clear who is behind it as kind of retaliation. It's like a hidden language, not like a civilized one, but a brutal one, I call it. At the moment you cause them damage, if you do it without taking responsibility, the message is understood based on the efficiency of the counterattack. So the other side, they need to understand that the moment they open the launch cyber war against Israel, they must suffer 3,000 times more. It's dynamic. Always you need to be on alert, but deterrence and technology, these are the two main solutions for the time being.
Okay, very interesting. Now, Ambassador Alemu, another question for you, sir. What kind of opportunities exist for Israeli companies in the cybertech sphere in Africa in general and more specifically in Ethiopia?
Thank you. Africa, when we speak of Africa, Africa is, a home of many low-income countries, and Africa is vulnerable to cyber attacks. African countries have now come to adapt to technologies and have started using the cyberspace for different aspects of life, say for education, for health, for telecommunication, for banking, for all aspects of life in the economic sector and in other sectors as well. In that context, there is huge potential for Israeli companies to invest in the high-tech sector and also to invest in the cyber security sector. One area of focus of investment could be building infrastructure, the necessary infrastructure for countering cyber attacks. And two could be also building the necessary manpower, creating manpower. For instance, taking Ethiopia as a case in point, we have a young, highly trained manpower. We have over 45 universities focusing on teaching the young generation in the tech sector, where there is a huge potential for Israeli companies to use the manpower in terms of training and deploying the manpower for various parts of Africa. So also for Israeli companies, there is a huge potential in terms of creating a network and also using the platform in Africa to invest in areas or sectors that we have indicated, including insurance, banking, and health sector, education, especially in terms of developing the capabilities of African countries in countering attacks in the cyber area.
Sounds like there's lots of opportunities there. Thank you for that. Let's move now to our next guest, Mr. Bogdan Bazga, an economist who specializes in food security and has represented Romania in the United Nations Organization for Food and Agriculture, FAO. He also specializes in international relations. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course. Today. So we are seeing now in the UK just how fragile supply chains can be. How vulnerable is the food supply chain to cyber threats?
Excellent question. Excellent question. I will not focus directly on United Kingdom. And all of us, we see what's happened. We see empty markets, and it's rise up a big question. Why? But besides of that, it's very, very important, this food supply. And we see what happened, because it's not new, this one. Because this we see some 4, 5, 6 years ago in Venezuela, when it started with this informations that will not be food. And immediately all the markets, in all over the country, they went empty. My personal idea, my personal perception on that, it's that the world is very, very changed. It's not like 10 years ago. Now, the predominant thing is the information, the database. And one of the main priority for food suppliers, especially for food industry, is how they will protect their own data. And also, besides of that, it's the fake news. It's very important. If they are not controlled, those can change practically the status of a region, of a country, on the food supply. It's very well connected also with the one of the UN big component at the level of the United Nations food system. And for that, the General Secretariat from the UN organized in 23 of September a World Food System Summit. And one of the best conclusion, it was that all the member states on the high level, they agree that the food system, it's very important and on the food supply, and also to prevent a world food crisis, because we see what's happened in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia. And coupled with the economic falling down, with the COVID, and all these things together, put it together, they create a problem for the food system and food supply. And finally, to come back to the United Kingdom, I'm very, very sure, because I know the colleagues, and I know that they are very high level of, would I say, of technology. They are a country which lead, would I say, it's together to lead the world, and I think that they will pass very fast this problem. Coupled, it's obvious, with the prices of fuels, and the main component, the price volatility. The fake news, what can create? Create an empty, could I say, markets. They will create also the falling down of the company, of the producers, and mainly for the agro industry. And for that, the best solution is on this component of digitalization, is to be in touch with the best of the best in companies to use their program in order to prevent the attacks, cyber attacks, and to protect their own data on the production, especially.
Do you think the food industry is sufficiently aware of the threats, and what does it need to be doing to minimize the risk that we're speaking about?
No, I don't think that, because the world is, as you see, it's separate in, what I say, in three components. The countries which are high, with high level of technology, medium and low. But personally, I don't think that all the countries and all the companies are very well prepared. It's not a warning, but it's very important to understand how much it's important to go in these programs, to be in contact with the best companies. And you see one of the best of examples, there are Israeli companies, which are the leaders on the high technology. And in this way, they will have possibility to be protected. Because in Romania, we have, would I say, a type of word is much better to prevent than to fight. And for that is needed to be very well informed and to be prepared, because our future, we don't know what will be. We hope to be very well and peace.
Mr. Bazga, thank you for this important perspective. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to President Plevneliev. Back to you now. Thank you for staying with us.
Happy to be with you.
So how do you see the importance of private sector initiatives such as Improvate to bring together governments in different countries with technology companies, as well as to connect technology companies themselves, both in general and specifically with regard to the cyber sector, of course?
Improvate is a unique initiative. We are very proud to be part of the Improvate network and the Improvate family. If you look at these conferences, they're so professional, we're learning so much, we're coming together, we're understanding. But on the other side, Improvate is unique because it brings the companies to the markets in a very efficient way. Today, we bring different decision makers in the cyber resilience, cyber tech industry from different countries, but tomorrow those companies will be welcome in countries like Bulgaria, Romania, all over Southeast Europe, to Africa and beyond. Improvate is bringing in a very efficient way the companies to the decision makers and to the markets. And we're very proud to witness how this happened in several occasions. And most importantly, we're also very excited because we are coming to a major event, and that's the Improvate Innovation Forum on 29th of November in Jerusalem. We will come, all of us, all over the world, acting ministers, presidents, former acting political leaders, business leaders, companies together in Jerusalem, and we will celebrate what Improvate is all about, bringing politics and business to markets together, learning and cooperating in a very efficient way. So I'm very grateful to be with you, and I continue to be a very proud member of the family, and I'm counting the days to come to Jerusalem and see all of you live.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are waiting for you in Jerusalem.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to our next guest, Bereket Knafo, who is head of Israel's economic and trade mission to Romania and the Ukraine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Lauren.
So we're very glad to have you, of course. Now, as head of Israel's economic mission to Romania and Ukraine, as I mentioned, can you tell us about the potential for bilateral trade in the cyber tech field?
For sure. Israel and Romania have been pursuing a prosperous economic and trade collaboration dated all the way since Israel's first days as a country. No wonder, therefore, the cyber tech field plays a major role in the bilateral trade between the countries, with recent intersection also in the field of cyber solution for hospitals and other critical infrastructure. Whilst Bucharest turning to the cyber capital city of Europe this year, it would be highly valuable, I think, to thinking together about the origins of this huge potential for commercial and economic collaboration in the cyber field between Israel and Romania. So it seems to me that it lies in the nexus between three pillars. The first pillar would be the high level of compatibility and synchronization between the Romanian challenges and needs, as well as the Israeli technological capabilities presented by a wide range of Israeli cyber companies and solutions. Romania has been experiencing lately a significant growth in the scope, the volume, and the level of sophistication of malicious cyber attacks. And that happened in 2020, that's keep going on in 2021. And this exposed actually an alarming reality. Many industries today are vulnerable, unprepared, and often lack the adequate infrastructure and trade personnel. Now, we already see a tremendous increase in the investment of public and private players in cyber protection. Amid the worldwide raging unemployment rates, we also have witnessed a continuous boost in cybersecurity job vacancies in Eastern Europe. And that's also true about Romania and Ukraine. On the other hand, the Israeli solution enjoy an excellent reputation. In June 2019, the mission to Bucharest led the historical MOU signed by the Israeli and the Romanian cyber authorities, and there are numerous successful implementation of Israeli cyber technologies in Romania, not to mention an ongoing knowledge and know-how sharing between Romanian and Israeli cyber entities. The second pillar would be the availability of substantive international and national funding for large-scale projects in various fields. For example, Romania is expected to receive almost 80 billion euros rescue and support funds from the EU. And part of that funding could be allocated to diverse cyber-related projects. Another very important project is the establishment of the European Cybersecurity, Industrial, Technology, and Research Competence Center in Bucharest. Those are big news, since the center will stimulate research and technological innovation for strengthening the cyber resilience within the EU, and it will also serve as the main body for managing European funds, such as Digital Europe and Horizon Europe. So this is also a historical timing where the relevancy of Israeli solution and the ability to acquire and implement it within the Romanian system meet. And of course, it's not just enough to have the budget or the right solution on the right time. The last but definitely not least pillar is the growing understanding of the leaders of the cyber, both governmental and private sector, that a more holistic approach is needed, especially in those pandemic times. In this regard, it's worth mentioning that the Romanian government approved about 2 weeks ago, so that's a relatively a new update, the establishment of the Romanian National Cybersecurity Directorate. This is a strategical, outstanding project aimed at being the link between Romania's public administration, business, and academia. Evidently, this is another sign for the skyrocketing potential for Israeli and Romanian collaboration, and that's what makes us very optimistic towards the future of the economic and trade cooperation between those countries.
Well, we're glad to hear that optimism. Now, Bereket, how can the mission help Israeli companies that want to do business in these countries?
I'm so glad you asked that. There are many ways, and all of them are free of charge. Every Israeli company that is registered in Israel approaches us to the economic and trade mission to Romania and Ukraine can enjoy substantive assistance in finding local business partners that could be distributors, integrators, buyers, local representative, end users, and so much more. Now, additionally to opening the right doors, we also offer business development and market survey services. Our local teams are well familiar and connected with the local market. They could offer unique strategic and updated insights that have been proven extremely crucial and highly effective to create new success stories. We conduct tailor-made scouting projects for Israeli and Romanian and Ukrainian partners. We lead business delegations that these days it could be either virtual, hybrid, or physical. Recently, we led the economic and business delegation that joined the former president of Israel, Mr. Reuven Rivlin, on his historical visit to Romania that happened in June this year. And our delegation always include tailor-made pre-scheduled B2B and B2G meetings. And this does not stop there. We invest a lot in follow-up activities in order to ensure that our matchmaking develop into a success story, meaning a real transaction. We are also here to remove trade barriers when it's needed, and we can do that thanks to the long-lasting cooperation that we have maintained with both governmental and private sectors in our respective markets.
And in general, what are the future activities and strategies of the Israeli Economic and Trade Mission that you're a part of?
Oh, that's a tough one. We need to be very agile, very flexible in order to do it. But besides enhancing the bilateral trade in already booming sectors such as cyber, we mentioned before, homeland security, digital health, energy, agriculture, and water management, I believe the pandemic has also accelerated digitalization process in diverse fields, consequently opening the door for Israeli solution in relatively new operational sector for us in Romania and Ukraine. For example, we observe a growing interest in fintech, smart city solutions. And in 21, what's left from this year, and 2022, we will also focus on those opportunities for Israeli companies in those fields. On the governmental level, cyber-related, we will continue to deepen and strengthen the economic collaboration as part of the Israel-Romania Joint Task Force, which we also have in the cyber field. This is especially evident during these times. And on the private sector, as I mentioned, we actively conduct tailor-made scouting projects of diverse players in the Romanian cyber field, Israeli companies that are interested to learn more about our future delegation, our future dialogues, are more than welcome to contact us via the email or the ERM system. Just search for the Foreign Trade Administration, Minal Sachar Chutz, at the Israeli Ministry of Economy and Industry, and a whole new world will open for you. I would like to take this opportunity and to thank you again for inviting me. I think those kind of initiatives are crucial for strengthening and deepening the economic ties between Israel and various countries. Thank you so much.
Some really, really helpful information. Bareket Knafo, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's move back to you, Amos Gilad. Thank you for staying with us. Now, terrorist organizations have discovered the potential in cyber attacks. How significant is the risk that non-state actors could upgrade their threat capacity and carry out a strategic act of cyber terrorism?
It depends who is the organization, because I'm not considering Hezbollah, for example, as non-state terror organization.
Interesting.
I'm considering it as extension of Iran. Iran is a mastermind of all these proxies. It begins from Yemen, but the Hezbollah, for example, they are the leading organization. Hamas, they are not totally dependent on them because they are Sunni Shia. Never mind all the details and the differences. We need to take them as a comprehensive threat divided to the levels of quality of the threat towards Israel. So how can we deal with it? We need to take them, all of them, seriously. No, it depends on the quality of the threat, and to tackle it as a threat coming from Iran. If it's Hezbollah, for example, it's Iran. It's part of the Iranian perception to exterminate Israel and to implement it to various areas of classic war, ballistic war, maybe in the future nuclear, and cyber is one of the major, because it's invisible. Invisible, it means it is deniable. Deniable means that it's very difficult publicly to identify the enemy, but based on good and excellent and qualitative intelligence, it's possible without being, I would like to repeat it, being smart. Namely, you need to develop, you need to know your enemy, to follow their systems, the modus operandi, to be able to protect yourself, but to be able to retaliate in a way that will share with them the real message of deterrence that must rely on capabilities to convince the enemy that the cost effectiveness is very low to it. And that works partly, not completely, because completely I do see more and more cyber threats toward Israel, towards other parts of the world, and not speaking of the information you can get by one successful attack. You can get a lot of information, or you can destroy very, let's say, essential infrastructure of water or electricity. If they come to conclusions that our protection is too good, they will find other ways. If they attack successfully, or even not successfully, and find the deterrence as a part of cost effectiveness, it might deter. Now the question is whether strategically you can put an end to it. My gloomy conclusion, no.
No?
No, you cannot put an end to it because always the enemy will find advantages in invisible that in one successful attack you can achieve a lot. So why to give it up?
Unfortunately. All right. I have one more question for you, Mr. Ambassador, and then unfortunately I have to...
also a financial. You can get a lot of money by extortion, so it's combined industry of terror. I think the benefits always will be more useful in the eyes of the enemies of the terror organization, of the state terror. So the bad news is we are on continuous war. The good news that we may have dramatic achievements, but not the capability to put an end to it.
So there is a little bit of optimism in there.
Always.
Always. All right. Thank you very much. I have to say goodbye to you both in a moment, but I want to ask you one more question, Mr. Ambassador. We've listened to a lot of experts. We've heard about a lot of innovations today. Is there something in particular that stood out to you that you think, maybe could be of use in Africa or Ethiopia, something that really stood out to you today?
Well, from all the discussions, from the conversations that I see, we can see that cybercrime is growing and that it's very complex and the dynamics change from time to time. And it's critical for nations to cooperate. And as I hear from the retired Major General Amos, whom I have spoken many times in different occasions, and creating the defense capability is important. In that context, in the cyberspace, the defense capacity should adapt to the changing conditions. As they say, the cyber threats, the criminals are always working behind the scene, trying to look into different ways of reaching out to the cyberspace. And it's always important to look into the loopholes where they get into. And the cooperative mechanisms that the states can create, one would be an international legal framework to combat cyber crimes. And the other would be also institutions, joint institutions and mechanisms to develop that. There are cooperative platforms at government-to-government level. We have started discussions between the institutions of cybersecurity between Ethiopia and Israel to enhance our cooperation in creating a cyber academy, in creating also capabilities where we can jointly combat cyber crimes. And there are lots of avenues where, be it in the business sector and also in other sectors where the cooperation and also collaboration and partnership would be essential.
One sentence, I think, following the ambassador important words.
Please.
It seems to me that international cooperation and bilateral cooperation, because sometimes there is difference. If you cooperate with everybody, you are not able to protect your secrets. But with bilaterally, with, for example, leading friends, it's very important, following what the ambassador says, to develop the international cooperation. And I think because the cyber threat has become major strategic one, the international cooperation, that's another good news that you're looking for, will develop dramatically.
Always looking for some optimism.
Absolutely.
All right. Amos
Thank you very much.
Ambassador Alemu, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. We have one final question for you, President Plevneliev. You're still with us, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. So we've heard today from leading companies and experts in the fields of cyber tech. What is your message to Israeli companies seeking to expand their cybersecurity operations in Europe?
Speaking about Europe, Europe is ongoing on digital and green transformation. We have a very ambitious program, and it's linked also to huge funds that are set available for that transformation to happen. All of the countries have their ambitious plans, and you heard about Romania, 80 billion euros. Bulgaria has almost 30 billion.
Look at the closer, life-saving technologies.
And each of the countries is there to be a great partner, strategic partner of Europe. I want to close this conference, of course, by saying to the Israeli companies that Improvate is a unique platform. Use it. Come to the Improvate conferences. Come to the Improvate Innovation Forum in Jerusalem. Let's all of us come together, and together in a cooperation, in our friendship, we're more efficient of solving all the threats and the problems. Especially at the end of this great conference, Lauren, I want to thank you. You've been a great moderator. I want to thank Ronit, because Ronit and her team are extreme professionals. You're doing really the best conference as a president. I participate. I'm very excited. I'm very happy to be with you. And I'm very motivated to continue doing what we do. And we are just in the beginning of bringing business to politics and business to business together in an effort for peace and free trade and free competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Plevneliev. It is always a pleasure having you with us. And that's it from Improvate's CyberTech 2021 conference. We've looked today into the critical field of cybertech and have heard from top experts from Israel and Europe, and from leading Israeli technology companies, CYBERINT, Protex, ZIMPERIUM, and Reta. Improvate is all about access and connections, exposing Israeli tech leaders to governments and companies around the world to promote businesses whose goal is innovation. The exposure right here at this conference is a first step. The next step, delegations and real-world business connections. We want to thank you all for taking part and hope this is just the start of us doing business together, making technology accessible to all and improving the lives of people across the world. Keep an eye out for Improvate's International Innovation Forum, which will take place on the 29th of November 2021 at the Orient Hotel in Jerusalem. The conference will be hosted by the Right Honourable Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, former world chess champion Garry Kasparov, and artist and tech entrepreneur will.i.am. The forum will be attended by world leaders and government ministers, investors looking to invest in Israeli companies, ambassadors, heads of financial institutions, senior government officials, and decision makers from Eastern and Western Europe, the United Arab Emirates, and Africa. Leading Israeli technology companies will present at the conference with the aim of creating wide-ranging business collaborations. I'm Lauren Izso. Thank you so much for joining us today.